All right, everybody, welcome to JCLive, your weekly source for JCL news and fun. I am Kurt Ristroff, your host and publications chair for the National Junior Classical League, an organization of middle and high school students in classics courses. Welcome to the show. We are very happy to have with us a new kind of panel, a new panel discussion. Please welcome to the show Doctors Erica Russ and Arvin Venkat, along with Savannah France. How are y'all doing?
Great.
Doing well.
Good, good. I'm so glad to have you on the show. Let me pull up the chat here so I can see it. As always, if anybody has any questions for me or for our panelists at any point during this stream, go ahead and tag us in the chat and we'll try and get your questions answered. I'll make the Instagram post saying that we're live and we're good to go. So, how are y'all doing? Happy Monday.
Happy Monday. It's Lupercalia.
It is. I forgot about that. My JCL chapter never did anything for Lupercalia. Did y'all's?
Yes.
I'm too old to remember, Kurt. Sorry.
No worries. That was some kind of fertility festival, right, Savannah?
Yeah, it's basically, we always spun it as a Roman Valentine's Day. My high school, we did a goat cake. Went down to Publix and put a goat on a cake. And that's how we celebrated. Ice cream social and some cake.
Okay. It's also President's Day, I forgot, so a lot of people I think may have had off of school today, which is okay because that means you haven't been in a Zoom class all day, so you're raring to go watch YouTube at night. So welcome to our three panelists. This is the JCL from JCL to Medicine panel, so we're going to be talking about y'all's paths from JCL to where you are now. So could you let us know a little bit about yourselves and how you got from high school JCL to today?
I can go.
Anybody can go.
Yeah, go ahead, Erica.
So my name is Erica Russ. I am an OBGYN resident now at a small, it's a big community hospital, but it's in Cincinnati, Ohio. So I started out in JCL as a freshman in high school, fell in love with it, and I actually decided that I was going to major in classics, basically because of my time in JCL. So I did that at Vanderbilt University. I also did my pre-med courses on the side, and I also took a lot of classes in bioethics and public health. And then, in college, I spent a lot of time pursuing classics because I knew it would kind of be the last time I would get to go on an archaeological dig and study abroad in Rome. And so I took full advantage of all of those opportunities while in college. Applied to medical school. Basically, during senior year, you go on interviews. I ended up coming back to the medical school in my hometown at the University of Kentucky. And then I spent 4 years there, loved it, graduated via Zoom in 2020. And now I'm a resident in real life. So mostly delivering babies and taking care of people's gynecologic needs.
So my name is Savannah France. I'm an EMT. So that means that I work on the ambulance and I respond to medical emergencies. Specifically, I work in 2 different rural communities in Florida. And maybe we can talk a little bit more later about the differences between working in a rural area versus working in a city. But I've been an EMT in April. It'll be 3 years. I'm also a senior at the University of Florida, and I am a pre-physician's assistant student right now.
So my name is Arvin Venkat. I'm an emergency physician in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I'm much older than the folks here on the cast, but come out the other side. So I was involved with JCL in the early 90s when I was the national president in 1992. I went to college thinking I was going to go to law school. A lot of what I took away from JCL was interest in humanities and liberal arts. Went to college, worked for a lawyer one summer, really hated it, and said, okay, well, now what am I going to do? And I really got into going to medical school because I liked the sciences, but I also liked the idea of working with people on a day-to-day basis. So ended up majoring in college in history of science, which, has a lot of interesting parallels today with the pandemic. Went to med school at Yale and then went to emergency medicine and do emergency medicine, where we, as you probably have seen during the pandemic, are on the front lines of the response today. We take care of every patient who comes through the door. Our training is to care for anything from traumas to strokes to heart attacks to pregnant women to obviously people who are very sick with COVID. And what I took away from JCL, I still have that love of the humanities and the liberal arts. I still do a lot of work in those areas. So I'm a practicing emergency physician, but I'm also a clinical and health policy researcher, and I'm a professor of emergency medicine where I get to teach residents and teach medical students. And I'm very involved with ethics, like Erica. I'm the ethics consultant for my hospital, so deal with a lot of ethical dilemmas in my hospital and health system. And then I'm also very involved with advocacy. I'm on the board of directors of the American College of Emergency Physicians, which is our national emergency physicians organization. So I do a lot of work with advocating on behalf of patients and emergency physicians across the country. And a lot of that started from my time in JCL and getting to know people across the country and having that confidence to do that type of work. So glad to be reconnected again.
That's terrific. Thank you so much. I see Dennis Webb is in the chat, which means that he's going to start texting me pictures of Erica and Savannah to hold up. He always does this when I have panelists on, but I beat him to it because I already have some pulled up. Here we go. So here's a picture of Erica Russ. You can see her in the back row. Wearing a cardigan. This is from, I won't say when it was, but this is from when Erica and I were in JCL officers together. Here's Erica giving, on the bottom left there is Erica giving a speech at Wake Forest in 2012. And there's Savannah wearing her boots at some convention or another. I don't know which one.
The last one in person.
Was it? Okay. And then if I scroll down here, we have a bunch of pictures of
black
Arvin
and white
from the torch. So we have, here's Arvin Venkat of Michigan Center is named the new national JCL president for 1991 to 92. Venkat, who served as parliamentarian this past year, is the first person to be elected to 2 NJCL offices.
Wow.
Learned that. That was cool.
That's awesome.
And actually, Erica and I each owe you a little bit because I saw also in the torch that one of the constitutional amendments that you put through when you were a parliamentarian allowed the office of editor to be elected instead of appointed. So I appreciate that because I was elected editor. And if I'm right, you're also the one who put through the idea of a first VP and a second VP, right?
Yeah, that was, now you're really taking me back. But yeah, there was a lot of reorganization of the officers in my time. And so having an elected editor was obviously really important in terms of communicating with our members. And a lot of the changes with first VP and second VP had to do with the financial aspects being more with our parent organization, the ACL. And so it made a lot of sense to have a first and second vice president with different responsibilities. So taking me way back, but it was a great experience. And those pictures are unbelievable to look at 20 some odd years later, 30 some odd years later.
Well, I had a lot of fun going through the old torches to find those. So, okay, so I just got rid of the chat. Not that it's gone, just that I couldn't see it. So, so what can y'all tell us about from JCL to medicine? I mean, you said some in your intros. And Arvin, you were talking before we started here about how not a lot of folks in your experience have done that. And to Erica and Savannah, is that sort of, y'all see that too? Are you sort of the only people from JCL you know who are interested in medicine, or has that changed?
Yeah, I mean, I'll take you back, 30 years. My memory was coming back to JCL for the 50th anniversary. I think I was in college or med school at the time, and it was unusual to see anybody who was involved with medicine. A lot of the people who I had seen who were alumni were business folks, they were lawyers, and they had done other things in their life. At the time, I was the only one in the room who was a physician or going to medical school, and I'm glad to see that's changed. I think there's a lot of things from JCL that really have helped my career in medicine, having a broader perspective about humanity and having a broader understanding of kind of the roots of different issues in society. Those are still things that I take to heart with my clinical work and the other work that I do in medicine.
I think also maybe the field of medicine used to be a lot more focused on like, you have to major in biology, you have to take chemistry and biology and be very strong in those fields. And you do still need to have a good understanding of the sciences. But I think that we have a lot more people who are coming from a social sciences background. A lot of my friends from medical school majored in psychology or sociology. Like, I think we're coming to an understanding that medicine is about providing healing care to people, and so we can't just ignore that they're people. They're not just cells and organs working together. And I think that a lot of medical schools are trying to embrace that and incorporate it in their students and in their curriculum.
Yeah, I think it's a really important point, especially what we're seeing in the pandemic. My kids, to date me, are not that much younger than all of you. My oldest is a sophomore in high school. And so seeing the impact, on my kids, on, my, community, a lot of what we're seeing in emergency departments in the healthcare system are a reflection of what's going on in the wider society. It's not just the biology or the physiology. It is lack of housing, lack of educational opportunities, poverty. A lot of that has really been heightened in the pandemic, and so I'm very grateful. Get back to JCL is having that kind of broader perspective that started in high school from studying Latin and being involved with JCL.
This is terrific because what I'm not hearing is I learned Latin and so that helped me on my MCAT with vocabulary or something like that, which is what I think a lot of people think sometimes is, oh, this is why you do Latin if you want to be a doctor or a lawyer, because the language skills more than anything else will help you. But each of you, Erica and Arvind and Savannah, it's your turn next, but it sounds like what y'all are saying is it's more about the humanity aspect of it, the historical understanding of how some of these systems have evolved and things like that, rather than I know all my Latin roots, I'm going to be better at anatomy class.
Yeah, I really think that one of the biggest things that I've taken away from being in the JCL and then now being in the SCL is just different leadership opportunities throughout pretty much everything that I've stepped into at the regional level, at the state level, and at the national level. Holding different positions have grown me as a person and have given me leadership skills that I did not get in other areas of my life as I've just developed as a person. And then coming into, working on the ambulance and then having to be a leader in these situations, like I touched on a little bit earlier, working in a rural community. In one of the places I work in, we're about 45 45 minutes to an hour away from the closest hospital. It depends on where you are in the county. And so there are many opportunities where we are standing with patients in the middle of their house, in the middle of nowhere. And it's up to us, my partner and I, to communicate with them effectively and help them feel, safe in that situation. And I think in the beginning, I used to be a lot more shy, but I think that the JCL really gave me a platform and a place to grow and become more outgoing, to be a better communicator now and a leader. So that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, so when I took Latin starting in 6th grade, and I feel like in middle school, what I really learned about the study of classics was like language and mythology. And I don't think it was until I was in JCL that I realized that there were like so many other parts of classics, that we have the material record from art and art history, and then we also have archaeologists who are doing amazing work. And it wasn't until I realized that there were different fields of study that I learned that I really like working with my hands as well as doing something academic, which is like a huge lesson that you have to learn about yourself as you progress in medicine. And I think that it was a great opportunity for me to reflect back on what I had learned about myself kind of growing up in JCL, and then also growing up in medical school, to realize that like there are different ways of learning knowledge and different ways of applying it. And everyone has a different path that can all be very useful to a broader study.
Yeah, I think Erica and Savannah said it very well. I mean, for me, not too confidential a secret, but as an academic Latin student, I was okay. I wasn't any great shakes as a, conjugating verbs or, all all of those things. But that process of learning how to think, how to approach something that is uncomfortable, and applying your mind to understand that, and having that root in the classics, and seeing that broader perspective on how our society is influenced by so many different areas. For me, it's still something that I use to this day in my work. As a clinical researcher, a lot of the work I do looks at health systems and health economics, and understanding how society interacts with the emergency care system. And the roots of that type of thought process actually goes back to when I started studying Latin in middle school and high school, because it really gave me a perspective beyond just what was in the textbook or what I was trying to understand on a day-to-day basis. So, for those who are listening and saying, what does, learning how to conjugate a verb have to do with whether I decide to go to medical school or not, or go into something, I would say, the nice thing about medicine is that it really, whatever part of the world you want to interact with, there is a field of medicine or a field of healthcare that has a relationship to it. And so, I have close friends who are psychiatrists, who are pediatricians, who are, EMTs, PAs, and all of them are making a difference from that interaction with society. So that's one of the things I really love about being a physician.
Terrific. That was actually the next thing I was going to ask, was how y'all each decided to pursue the thing that you're pursuing. So Savannah, how did you get involved working on an ambulance in college? And how, Erica, how'd you decide to be an OBGYN? And Arvin, how'd you decide to go into emergency medicine and then also this advocacy work simultaneously?
Yeah, it's very interesting. I think there was an initiative in Florida to make vocational jobs more visible to high school students. So it was actually in my Latin classroom, there was a list of different vocational jobs, trade school jobs that you could that you can have as careers. And on the list, I saw surgical technician, which I thought that sounded pretty cool. At that time, I knew, or I thought that I wanted to go to medical school. And so I needed patient contact hours to get in. And so the surgical technician program is 2 years. So I thought that would probably, I was looking at something to do after high school and then go to college. And I thought that would be a little bit too much of a time commitment. But then I also saw emergency medical technician or an EMT, someone who works on the ambulance. And I thought, gosh, I've seen those TV shows before. That sounds really cool. So I was very blessed because of me seeing this list. I was able to take emergency medical responder course, which is the precursor to EMT school. And then I applied to EMT school immediately after graduating high school. I took one course online at the University of Florida, and then I was able to go through medical school, EMT school after graduating. So I really got to it early, so that worked out very well for me. And I mean, now as I've continued to grow through my college studies, I had decided to do pre-physician's assistant instead. Having experienced aspects of the hospital and the emergency room and seeing the roles that physicians play and the roles that physician's assistants plays and everybody, and just seeing, knowing myself and seeing, okay, how can I best fit into all of this? So where I am now, that's where I'm going. So.
For me, let's see. So for OBGYN, so I knew I wanted to go to medical school. Basically, senior year of high school, I was pretty sure, but I was kind of keeping my mind open and really decided by the end of freshman year. I wanted to have an open mind about what specialty to choose, because you go to medical school and you can really do any of them. And then you do a residency in what specialty you want to do. And so everyone who practices in the US alone has to complete a residency. So even things that people consider to be like generalists, they actually still have specialty training. So I just loved everything about women's health. I loved reproductive health. As we were going through kind of the classroom part of medical school, I was like, the placenta is so cool. And I feel like there are only a few different types of people. People are either like, I love reproductive physiology, or I do not. And then the first time I delivered a baby, I was like, this is awesome. I love being a part of this woman's life. I love being able to be supportive of her through what is a very scary time, but also a very joyous time. And then I also realized that I liked working with my hands and I liked being in the operating room, because OBGYNs are surgeons, first and foremost. So you have to be ready to take charge and ready to do what you need to do in the OR to take care of your patient and work with your hands. And I loved all of that. I loved being able to care for women and be kind of their primary care physician, but also the person who is with them every step of the way and will do whatever they need to do to take care of the patient.
Yeah, so for me, like I said, I kind of backed into medicine a little bit. I didn't think I was going to be going to medical school when I went to college. When I went to medical school, I thought I was going to end up as a dermatologist in Southern California because I kind of had this vision of going out there, and I ended up being an emergency physician in Western Pennsylvania. So go figure. So
it's like the opposite in both cases.
Yeah, exactly. So I fell in love with emergency medicine very much for similar reasons that Erica talked about with OBGYN, is that I loved the fact that you saw every patient who came through the door. I mean, emergency departments are the only part of the healthcare system where it doesn't matter if you have insurance, it doesn't matter if what your immigration status is, it doesn't matter where you're from, you are going to get care. And I really fell in love with that. And I loved the fact that the training allowed me to take care of anyone who came through the door, at least for a short period of time. It involves a lot of diagnostic skills. There are procedural aspects to it. You also have kind of a system perspective. I mean, the emergency department is really the canary in the coal mine for so many social pathologies. So when we're talking about the opioid crisis, or we're talking about the pandemic, or we're talking about lack of health insurance or other issues, mental health, these all kind of have the most prominent severe aspects that show up in the emergency department. And so that's how I ended up getting involved with research and advocacy, because I wanted to be involved and be a voice for my patients who often don't have a voice in the system. They are, coming to the emergency department because they don't have anywhere else to go. And so being involved and being able to advocate for them and advocate for my colleagues in emergency medicine has been very rewarding. The other thing about emergency medicine is that when you're done, you're done. Unlike OBGYN, you work a shift in the emergency department, and when you leave the emergency department, your obligations are done clinically. You aren't following up with patients. That's a plus and a minus, but over the weekend, I worked in the emergency department. We're having a cold spell here in Pittsburgh. I was joking with these guys that unfortunately lots of people were getting injured yesterday on the ice. Today, I had a lot of meetings related to research and advocacy and all the other aspects, and I'm able to have that work-life balance as well. So that's how I ended up deciding to take the path that I did.
Yeah, I can definitely echo similar sentiments working. I help deliver to the ER my patients. So I really enjoy the catch-all aspect of, for me in my situation, I'm going all across my county. I don't know where I'm going to end up. I don't know whose house I'm coming into. And, we can have a calm moment. And then the next minute we can be helping somebody who's having a heart attack or a stroke or something like this, and something that requires all of you physically and mentally. We worked all day and it was pretty calm. All of our patients very calm. And then at 3 a.m. in the morning, that's when everything turned on, and we really needed to help our patient, to help them breathe, and get them transported to the hospital quickly and safely. And we were sleeping, and then we weren't, but it's just exciting. It really is, to be able to see people in the places that they live, which is very diverse. Some of the, like we've kind of alluded to here, some of the situations are not the greatest, but to be able to see these people as they are and to come to them and help them. And sometimes even bringing them to the hospital, that can be a help in of itself. But we also are able to connect people with social workers at the hospital, and just help them beyond whatever medical need that they have. I'd
like to hear more about that, Savannah. Actually, how do you decide? Do you always go to the hospital, or do you sometimes have different places that you guys decide this person is better suited for this place? How do you make those decisions?
So on an ambulance, you have an EMT and a paramedic. A paramedic, well, I should say it depends on where you are. In Florida specifically, there's typically a paramedic and an EMT. When you go up into New England, they actually have more of 2 EMTs on an ambulance, and then a paramedic will come in a supervisor or an SUV to assist in the situation. But for us, it depends on hospital criteria. So there are different levels of hospitals. So you have level 1 hospitals that are trauma centers that can do everything. And then you have hospitals that don't quite have as much resources, level 2. And then you have rural hospitals that just have not too many resources. Those are usually your level 3 and 4 hospitals. So depending on the severity of the problem, we have a couple options. You can get flown out by helicopter, or we will transport you most of the time by ground. Specifically in Gainesville, there are a lot of standalone ERs that kind of surround the city of Gainesville. So we, sometimes we transport patients that are of less severity to those standalone ERs. But a lot of the times we end up transporting to the level 1, the main hospitals in Gainesville, because those hospitals have CT machines and all long-term care, those sort of things. So we try to, a lot of times, whatever the criteria of the call is, or the paramedic decides what is the most appropriate facility for the patient.
Wait, Savannah, are you trained to be on a helicopter too?
No. So to be on a helicopter, you have to have you have to be a nurse, a registered nurse, and a paramedic.
Okay.
Though I will say, when I was in emergency medicine residency, I flew on the helicopter quite a bit. It is part of a lot of emergency medicine residency training programs. And I was happy when I was done with training to not fly on helicopters anymore.
Yeah, I one time was in an apartment that was on like the 17th floor, and we could look out the window down to, it was across the street from a hospital, and there was their landing pad. So I could look out and see whenever the helicopter was coming and going, and it made all kinds of noise. And so I was always glad when the helicopter wasn't having to go be somewhere, because 1, that meant that nobody needed them, and 2, it wasn't loud in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm out of questions. I mean, I said before, sometimes these things turn into me asking questions and y'all answering, but I'm out of questions, so we're gonna have to figure out how to fill the rest of the time, and I'm confident that we're gonna be able to. So what else? What else do we talk about? What else do y'all have to tell us?
Yeah, I was listening to Savannah and Erica, and I was thinking about the different parts of medicine. And, I think Savannah and I are trying to be the best part of someone's worst day, when we're talking about emergency care. And Erica is trying to be the most important part of what is hopefully one of their best days when they have a child. So, I think that's one of the great things about medicine. I'm the old fogey here, so maybe I'll ask Erica and Savannah, what do you think about as you're starting your careers, from your JCL experience, and what you're thinking about as you start your careers in healthcare?
Well, I'm not going to lie to anyone who's listening. Sometimes when you're in residency, the thing you're thinking about most is how you're just going to get through the day or the week. Because it can be really daunting. So medical training is it's 4 years of medical school after your undergraduate degree, and then it's 3 to 6 years of residency, which is long hours, but some of the most hands-on and most you just feel very useful. You feel like you're the one who's really actually taking care of the patient because you are. You're the first person they see, and you're the person who is enacting all of their plans. And so it's very rewarding, but it is a very hard training. And so some days are easier than others. I think for me, one of the things that's most important to stay grounded is to think about the ways that I can make sure that I'm trying to make the moms that I'm feeling with feel empowered. So I think we all heard of birth stories where women felt like everything happened all at once and people were yelling at them, or they got rushed back for a C-section that they didn't expect. And it was scary. And I think remembering that the patient you're dealing with this is an opportunity for her to be the empowered, because she is the person who is giving life into this world, and she's going to be the person taking care of this new life, and making sure that relationship can start from a place of like a solid footing where women feel empowered is something that I try to remember every single day. That was kind of roundabout, but.
Will you say that question again?
Well, I was just asking, what are you thinking about as you start your careers in healthcare?
Gosh, for me, I'm kind of in the thick of things because I'm progressing toward the goal, the end goal that I would like, which is to be a physician's assistant. Oh, I didn't mention before, I have so much fun on the ambulance. After I finish college, I'm going to go to paramedic school, and then I'll go to physician's assistant school, which is a bit of an unconventional route. But I have been so inspired at this particular stage in my life that I think it would be really cool to experience what it's like to be in charge of an ambulance and be a paramedic, and again, building up those skills, those new leadership skills, and becoming a better patient advocate, so that being a better patient advocate as I continue to learn, so that when I am a physician's assistant later, hopefully I'll be just better for my patients. So
it's hugely important work. Just speaking as an emergency physician, good emergency medical services, paramedics and EMTs make a huge difference for patients. And one of the scariest things as an emergency physician is having what's called a precipitous delivery, a pregnant woman who comes in and needs to have their baby right now and isn't going to wait around for an OBGYN. So I have all the respect in the world for both of you for what you're doing, because both of them are so important.
I have to say, some of my favorite deliveries are when we go down to the emergency department and the relief on the physician's face.
Yeah.
It's just like, you're like, I'm an intern, and I know that you have been doing this for a long time, and so it makes me feel good when you're like, thank you, you're here.
No doubt about it.
Having
delivered a few babies, I'm happy to leave it to those who specialize in it. No doubt about it.
Yeah, I definitely had to cross my fingers a few times that we get to the hospital quick enough. It's worked out well so far. So, but.
Well, when we had the lawyers on, I asked them what one of their favorite cases or most interesting cases or funniest cases that they had worked on, and I know of course there was medical confidentiality and things like that. Well, what have been some of your favorite experiences in your work? Savannah, you say you have fun on the ambulance, and Erica, it sounds like you've had some good births that you were able to turn from bad to good. Tell me about, and you're not limited to those, but what are some of the things your best memories from your work?
My favorite calls are the ones where I guess where I'm challenged, but there have been a couple situations where you're just in a situation where morally the truth comes out. Right? One way my friend put it one time, you're either a person that, I mean, with respect to, being in EMS and also emergency medicine, you're either the person that stands there like a deer in headlights, or you're the person that makes a decision. So one of my favorite times, sorry, a little bit of thunder. One of my favorite times was a situation where I was by myself and I had to make a decision. Now, I won't go too into it, but I made the wrong decision. But mentally recovering from that situation later, I was very thankful to reflect on the fact that I was able to make a decision versus doing nothing. One of my friends, paramedic, put it, it's a lot easier to work with someone and teach someone that can make a choice, make a decision, versus somebody who's kind of the deer in headlights. You can still work with that person and teach that person, but it just takes a little bit more time. So basically any situation that challenges me mentally and physically, I think is the most enjoyable part.
You always have wild stories when you're in the emergency department, or honestly on labor and delivery. People just say and do the funniest things. But I think one of my favorite patients from medical school was actually, I saw them in the emergency department as I was working on my surgery rotation. And it was an older man. He was like late 70s probably, who had really bad abdominal pain. And basically the long and the short of it was that he needed surgery immediately because his bowel, part of his intestines were like dying. And he was adamant the whole time, and his wife was there, that he had nothing wrong with him. His wife just is not a very good cook. Yeah. The dinner she had made was just not very good.
Oh no.
So that was just a fun situation to try to convince this man that he needed surgery. And his wife was like, I'm not that bad of a cook. So that was fun.
Yeah, as long as you're not too sensitive, EMTs and OBGYNs and physicians in general are great at dinner parties because the stories are hard to believe and will make you laugh and cry at the same time. I think for me, emergency medicine is all about, can you make a quick difference for the patient to hopefully save their life? And so the best patients, are the ones that come in and they seem very, very sick, and you're able to make a huge difference for them. So, one of the most common things we see are patients with flare-ups of congestive heart failure, which is a condition where the heart is not pumping well, and so patients have a really hard time breathing, and they're really struggling, and you can make a rapid difference for them with some very quick interventions. And one of my favorite stories, it wasn't a congestive heart failure patient. I live here in Pittsburgh. Everybody's a Steelers fan. My hospital is really close to Heinz Field where the Steelers play. And we had a patient who had a heart attack at the stadium, actually collapsed. EMS was there, used electricity to restart his heart. and it was successful. And by the time he showed up in the emergency department, he was awake and alert. And as we were treating him, he actually turned to me and said, "Hey, Doc, I feel great. Can I go back to the game?" And we had to kind of tell him, probably not the wisest idea, but, being able to make that difference for patients so that they can joke with you like that is very rewarding.
We got. Go ahead, Savannah.
One of the cool things about working in a rural area and with that long time to get to the hospital, we get to see, a lot of the times we get to see the effects of our medication. Working on an ambulance in a hospital, or excuse me, in a city, if you're 5-10 minutes to the hospital, you're giving medication and you're not necessarily seeing the effect that it has on a patient. Related, unrelated, I guess, kind of in the same vein, one of my favorite things to experience is when a patient has low blood sugar, and you give them dextrose, you give them the sugar that they need. So when you come to them, sometimes these patients are unconscious, and to watch them just come back to life before you and look at you and say, "Why are you in my house?" And it's like you have to explain to them, "Oh, okay, yeah, this is why we're here. Your sugar was low, but it's okay, no problem." It's literally like night and day. It's really awesome.
We got a couple of comments. Susan Shearer is watching. She says,
"Oh, wow.
It's great to see Arvind." She thinks it's funny that you called yourself the old fogey because, of course, in her own words, this notice is coming from one of NJCL's oldest fogies, but she's really enjoying the show. So,
yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, she Mrs. Scherer was always great about keeping in touch with all of us after we left our JCL time. So right back at you.
And Mr. Webb is texting me photos of everybody, but I can't put them on the screen because they're on my phone. So, but he's got a photo archive of Arvind. It looked like he met you at the 50th in San Diego, and of course he has pictures of Erica from when she was an officer. Last couple of minutes, I guess y'all have already given advice to people who are considering this career. Is there any more? I guess.
Yeah, I think so. Explore, right? Explore. There's so many aspects to what medicine is, whether that's physically working with patients or working in a lab and researching molecules. You have EMTs, you have paramedics, you have different levels of nurses, physician's assistants, nurse practitioners. You have so many different areas and levels of medicine that you can participate in. So there's definitely a place for everybody who's interested. So look around, shadow people. I think that's a good way to start.
I completely agree. I would say when you're in your undergrad career, if you want to go to medical school, I got the advice to do what you like because you'll be doing medicine for the rest of your life, which was a little bit like a defeatist way of saying that. But what it meant for me was that I worked on an archaeological dig in college. I wrote a classics thesis. I did all of the things that I wanted to do with that, and it's still helpful and useful for me. And it grounded me as a medical student and then as a physician. So do what you like, have fun. You do have to still take the MCAT, but
I was going to say, you still had to take first and second organic chemistry with all those darn chemical engineers in the room who were, not there for the same reasons.
Yeah, but diversity of voices is really important in medicine, and diversity of thought patterns. Classics gives you a great way, like we've talked about, of organizing the world. And so you can do classics and still go into medicine. and just, use time that you do have off to do self-reflection about what you do like. And you don't have to go to medical school to, like Savannah said, to be in medicine. There are so many different fields. I mean, Kurt, you basically like design mRNA things, right?
Well,
Like, that's so cool.
Not at the moment. Right now, I'm working with peptides. But yeah, I mean, we were talking before the show. I didn't want to weigh in on this because I'm not a doctor, but I do, like, my graduate work is in pharmaceutical formulations. So I'm thinking about people not at all like Arvin and Erica are thinking about these people's hopes and dreams and lifestyles and desires, and I'm very much taking like the engineering. Okay, like this is an organ, this is how diffusion works inside this organ, this is how, like, the very mechanistic approach to the body in the work that I do. So I didn't want to weigh in, but point is, yeah, I didn't go to medical school either, and I'm still working in something that is peripheral to medicine. Sure.
Yeah, I mean, one of the great things about healthcare, and I'll say this as someone who's in the middle of my career, is that having that perspective from the classics of seeing the world in a very holistic sort of way has been so beneficial, because your career changes so much. When I started practice, my work was largely in the emergency department, seeing patients, and that's still the most rewarding part of what I do. But having that mental flexibility to be able to look at opportunities that come up, to look at opportunities in advocacy, to look at opportunities in research, doing stuff with the media, with the pandemic. These are things that, for me, really started from studying the classics when I was in middle school and high school, and having that broadening of my mental outlook that still hopefully helps me to this day. So, echo everything that Erica and Savannah and Kurt have said, that, do what you love. Life is short, but it's long as well. And so make sure that you're taking advantage of those opportunities and look at what the opportunities are, because you never know what's around the corner. There are lots of things that'll change, and studying the classics is a great way to have that flexibility to do so.
Terrific. This isn't a YouTube channel that does clips. We do the live streams. There's some channels that will do an hour-long stream, and then they'll like clip out 90-second segments of it and upload those as videos. I don't do that because I don't know how, but that would have been a great clip to make. Was your answer there? So I really appreciate it. I appreciate all three of you coming on. I really do. This is very enlightening. We are getting close to time, so I think I'm gonna ask y'all to hang out for a couple of minutes, and I'll mute myself in this chat, and I'll come say goodnight properly in a few minutes after I talk to the officers. So.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
See y'all. Okay. All right. Okay. Thanks so much to our amazing panelists. That was terrific. And of course, if you have any questions for our panelists, you can let them know in the comment section down below the video. If there's anything that you wanted to ask them, or if you're watching this later and you have any questions for them, because I read those comment sections, and when people leave comments, if they have any questions for the panelists, I can get back in touch. Now we're going to bring our officers on over. I think. There we go. Nope. That's not right. There we go. Hi, Daniel. Hi, Lindy. How are y'all doing?
Pretty good. How are you?
Doing well. Just had a great talk with some really great people. Lindy, how about you?
Doing well, yeah. Having a nice night.
Good. Did y'all have school today, or did you have off?
I had off.
President's Day.
Yeah. Okay. How do you feel about having a whole day for you, Daniel? It's the President's Day. You're the president.
Oh, that's so true. I didn't really think of that. Maybe, how you get your parents stuff for Father's Day or Mother's Day. Maybe I should have gotten some gifts from the committee. Oh, it's just a gift. It's a gift being here on JCLive with you. And
I was gonna say, okay,
that's my gift.
I can also put some candy in the mail or something if you like, or get you a card. So what are y'all gonna tell us about today?
I'll let Lindy go first today.
So basically, I'm just gonna show you guys the winners for Club of the Month from November and December. It's been on the NJCL Instagram for a little while, but I'll just update the JCLive watchers really quickly. So I'm going to share my screen. Can you see that?
Yep.
All right. Um, so this includes 2 months, just for the sake of having one packet that just includes it all. But first place for November was the Meadow School. They're in Nevada. They had a really great local convention type activity. And they gave out hand sanitizer and fabric masks as a gift, which I thought was really cool. Inventive idea. November 2nd place was North Gwinnett Junior Classical League. They wrote letters to soldiers. You can see them in the photo. They're really beautiful letters. And so I thought that was wonderful. Third place was Franklin High School. As you can see, they did a Buffalo Wild Wings and Panera fundraiser. It looks like they had a really good time. November honorable mention.
Where's Franklin High School? Do you know?
Oh man, I should know, not off the top of my head, but
Well, they're not in New Jersey, because otherwise I would have gone to that Buffalo Wild Wings fundraiser. I love Buffalo Wild Wings.
yeah, I mean that's a good idea. I think other JCL clubs can be inspired by the Panera and Buffalo Wild Wings fundraiser. Walton High School, they had like a spelling bee event, which is really inventive as well. I don't think I'd be so great at that.
Was it in English or in Latin?
They did not specify. However, I'm gonna go with, I bet you it was in Latin.
That's awesome.
Yeah. For December next month in Florida, Timber Creek High School JCL, they wrote letters to troops as well, and they made these like different, I don't know, you can see these in the photo, these like different baked good type, like Roman mosaics, which was really cool. They were really beautiful. So an amazing club. Walton High School, again, they had a cupcake competition. You can see the winning cupcakes there. They're little animals. It was really so cute. Franklin High School again, they did a can drive, and Rising Tide did a trivia night, and they did like Jeopardy style trivia. So that's posted on the NJCL Instagram for anyone who wants to kind of read more in depth. But a lot of wonderful clubs and a lot of wonderful events, so that always is exciting.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. And remember to submit to Club of the Month by the end of the month. You've got 2 weeks left, so we're excited to see what you'll come up with for February. Daniel, your turn. Oh, Franklin is in New Jersey. Well,
yeah, it is in New Jersey, as I was doing as well.
I think they are not close to me, though.
Before I go ahead with mine, I have one question for you, Mr. Ristroff. Boneless wings or bone-in wings?
I like to go on Thursdays for boneless wing night. And I have a long story about why I prefer boneless wings. It's not inappropriate, but it's something that I don't want to... I'll tell you at spring planning meeting. Remind me at spring planning meeting, and I'll tell you the whole thing.
I will. I agree with you, though. Boneless wings are far superior, but...
Terrific.
Regardless...
Mm-hmm.
Boneless wings don't have a lot to do with the late Bronze Age, which is what I'm going to tell you about today. So, I am always very eager to share with everyone things that I find interesting about classical civilization in the ancient world. And one thing that's been kind of occupying my mind lately, and that I've been reading everything I can get my hands on about, is the late Bronze Age. So, we tend to think of, we're the Junior Classical League, so we focus on the classical civilization. So that's the height of Rome and ancient Greece. But we don't really think about all the time what comes before that. So before the golden age of Greek civilization, we get the Greek Dark Ages. And that was, as the name implies, not the best age for Greek civilization. But before that, we get the late Mediterranean Bronze Age. And it was just this beautiful, colorful world. This is when you get the Minoans on Crete, the height of ancient Egypt and New Kingdom Egypt. And it's just this really amazing world. And we don't tend to think of it as being just as amazing and full of art and culture as the classical world, but it really is. And so I've had Mr. Ristroff put in the description of the video a couple of videos that I think really kind of encapsulate the end of the period and just how kind of mysterious it is. I love a good historical mystery, so the late Bronze Age collapse is definitely something that I'd encourage everyone to watch. these videos. One's by Historia Civilis, who also has some fantastic videos about ancient Roman civilization, and particularly the late Republican period with Julius Caesar and all our favorite Romans, and Extra History, which also just has a bunch of great animated history videos. So I'd encourage everyone to go watch those.
Yes, I am putting those in the description as we speak, because I think I meant to put them in last week's and I forgot to put them in this week's, so it's okay. They're about to be in the video description.
But yeah, they're always going to be there, and I love that period. I think it's really neat. At least right now, it's tickling my fancy, as it were.
Terrific. Thank you. Well, I'll definitely share those. They'll be in the description in about 30 seconds, and check those out. Okay, we will see y'all. I forgot to tell people what the next week's shows are. Next week is another panel discussion. It's going to be from JCL to business. So we have some folks who work in investing and somebody who works in business consulting who are going to come on and talk about that. The week after will be March 1st. So Irene's going to come on to read us the Spring Torch. The week after that is March 8th, and that's a surprise. And then the week after that is going to be the Ides of March, March 15th. And one of the officers, do y'all want to share what we're going to be doing for the Ides of March?
Sure. So I guess President's Day is kind of fitting. Julius Caesar wasn't quite a president, but he is certainly a man in power. So for the Ides of March, we are going to be having a very special Among Us episode where you can see, all the national officers and maybe Mr. Ristroff, if he wants to play with us, fight each other for the Ides of March, a story of betrayal in honor of the occasion.
Yeah. I don't think I'm going to play, but because I'll be managing the stream, but we may be able to invite some viewers to play, and you can hang out with the officers that way. So that'll be fun. That'll be in 1 month. So those are the 4 next shows. Thank you so much to our panelists tonight for coming on this week's show from JCL Medicine. Thanks so much to the 2 officers, Daniel and Lindy, for coming on and giving your reports. We'll see y'all next week. Cheers.